Sorry. Welcome to Office Hours. Today is August 12th, 2020, and we're here to talk about SEO. As has been our tradition for the last couple weeks, let's keep our tradition and start talking about successes we've had over the last week. Would anybody like to jump in on something that went well for them? Well, okay.
Well, I'll just jump in and say that I'm really starting to see how these various pieces kind of fit together a little bit. And it's very interesting. Like you said, it's a lot of work. There's no shortness to it. And David, I took Yoast off of that website and I've had a much better week working.
Good, good. LaVonya, did you have a nice success this last week that you'd like to share? Besides chicken?
No, I just pretty much focus on getting myself more organized as I studied this SEO.
Organization is really key. Like, don't devalue that. I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of time because they aren't organized.
Yeah, it's very helpful as I've started organizing and categorizing everything.
Yeah, good, good. Mine is I think I said to LaVonya earlier, I'm a little down because I lost my first pandemic client this week. So it's like, oh man, I feel for the business owner, and feel it's disappointing to lose a client always. But I think my good news is that I've been waiting for something from a client for 3 weeks, and it's basically put me in a standstill on a major part of the project for 3 weeks as the client has been struggling to get me access to something, basically a list of things that are coming that I can work on, and finally got it. So it just feels relief to be, oh, thank goodness we can finally proceed. It's not even an SEO success. It's more of an organization success that, yay, we finally were able to get this unlocked. But it feels better to just finally get that going. Well, so great. Did either of you two have any questions about SEO that we wanted to talk about this week?
Yes. Have you ever had a customer or client that they just want you to set up the SEO and that was it? Or you always had them want to work with you throughout the year or so?
Yeah. Sometimes clients will ask me if I will SEO them, which it kind of implies that it's a set it and forget it thing, kind of like the slow cookers we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I do get people asking me that, and I try to encourage them to say, that's not really how SEO works. We have to keep working at it for it to be most effective. Now, I know some web companies will build websites and deliver an SEO package with it and say, hey, now your website is SEO'd. Well, I feel that's a little disingenuous because there's a lot to SEO on an ongoing basis, and we not be doing a full service if we just did something and walk away. Take, for example, if we went through all the website and wrote title tags for each page of the website. Well, that's great. And title tag is an important part of an SEO campaign, and making sure that each page has a unique title tag is important, and make sure the title tags have a keyword focus is important. And that's something you could set up. But we're going to set it up based on our keyword research, right? So we've gotten data to tell us which keywords are most important to customers. But if we're doing SEO right, we're going to go back in a couple months and see what's happened. Are people really searching for what we thought they were searching for, right? There's so many times when I've done keyword research on a page and I say, oh, this is the phrase I think is most searched for, but I've also included other phrases on the page thinking, oh, there's many other ways someone could find this. And although the data seems to suggest one phrase is the most important, after a few months later, you start to see, oh, Google is serving them up for a little bit different variation on that phrase. And so as a best practice, I'll go through every couple months on every page of my client's site and just check and see what are they getting traffic for, and is it producing clicks, and is that producing in turn leads? So you could do something where you say, okay, you pay me a finite amount of dollars and I will set stuff up for you. But I don't know how effective that would be. Besides, SEO is kind of, we're playing a game where Google's changing the rules while we play it. So what works for a title tag now might be a little different in a couple months, or it probably is very different in a year, or like meta descriptions right now. Meta descriptions right now need to be about 150 to 160 characters long. But I heard this week that Google is expanding the amount of meta description characters they're allowing again. So that means maybe we can get away with 200 characters. Well, okay. So if we've written it for 150 and now we get 2, what's happening is Google's adding stuff that we don't necessarily want Google to add to the search results. So then if we go back and we change all the meta descriptions, well, that's great. That's part of the ongoing SEO. But what if at that point Google says, no, we're going to go back to 150? Well, now we have meta descriptions that are too long. This is actually a circumstance I ran into a couple of years ago where Google said, we're expanding the meta descriptions. And then a month or two later, they go, we're contracting the meta descriptions. So to just do it once would actually not be doing the full service. So that's why I discourage people who want to hire me for a one-time project to do it. Now, sometimes I might be willing to consider that as long as they acknowledge that this will only go so far as a way of getting a foot in the door at the client to say, hi, I'd be happy to help you, but know that I don't think this is the best practice, and you should come back to me in a few months and we should either do it again or you should consider an ongoing campaign. And sometimes they will say, okay, well, let's do it once. And then a few months later, they'll say, you know what, you're right. Let's do it ongoing. Or 6 months later, they say, let's do it again. Okay, I mean, it's not the best way to do an SEO thing, but at least they're making some progress. Is that what people are asking you to do, LaVonya?
Yeah, because I think, you have some that are working on a budget and maybe SEO doesn't fit into their budget. So that's why I was asking. I also was thinking, well, maybe I can put it into the package when I first set up their website. But that's why I asked you the question, because I think this particular person that I'm working with, I think she may say, okay, yes, do it, but I don't want to do it ongoing monthly, paying you monthly to do this for me.
Yeah. I've been there before, and if budget's a reason to not do it, well, doing a one-time setup is better than doing no SEO, right?
Right.
But I think it kind of goes back to the idea of how do we sell SEO, which is really as a way of making more money. So if we want our website to produce more income for our business, SEO is not as an expense as much as a way to make more money. It's part of the advertising budget. So I'd almost push back a little bit and say, well, what are you doing to promote your website?
Okay.
And and see if they are doing ongoing spending somewhere. Are they spending money on Facebook ads? Are they spending money on a bus stop banner, on a yellow page ad? Okay, well, those are expensive, and SEO not only is probably a lot more effective than a bus stop ad, but we can actually show you the value you're making from our efforts rather than the bus stop ad, which is, I hope someone goes to my bus stop and sees my ad, and when they see my ad, I hope they call me.
Right. Okay.
So maybe yeah. So I wouldn't say no to them. No, you got to pay me month to month. But I would just, be an expert to them and remind them that this is not the best way to do it, but you will get them started on an ongoing, get them started with the hopes that later they'll see the value and want to come back and invest in you as a part of their advertising budget.
Okay.
Question regarding content on a page.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in thinking of the overall scheme of things
Mhm.
and how SEO fits into that, when you have someone that wants graphic content on their site that has absolutely nothing to do with what they're doing, does that damage them? Oh, wellness site that wants an illustration of some random musical instruments. They don't do anything with music. It's in, like I said, it's an illustration. I don't need, I don't even know how to put something like that in there that would even make it remotely relevant. Is that going to hurt them? Because I've already had the conversation that, okay, a lot of the graphics that you like are better suited for social media, not on your website. And so the question was, well, are you saying I can't use them? I'm not saying you can't use them. I'm saying they offer you no benefit. So is I think that's just where I kind of let that one lie. This offers you no benefit, or is there another something that I can add to that in a case like this picture that I'm looking at and I'm going, why?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question, because I've encountered similar situations to that often. Like, why is there a piano on the OBGYN page? Like, someone thought it made sense. Doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. So when I encounter issues like this, I pull out the Bible. I gotta find my Bible. I can't find my Bible. The Bible is a book called Don't Make Me Think. It's like the definitive book on usability of websites. Highly recommend it. I swear it's right here. I'm not seeing it right now. Anyway,
You don't see it, David, because you're looking for it.
That's
Otherwise, you'd be
exactly
tripping
right.
over it.
That's right. That's right. So, but Don't Make Me Think. It's not a book about SEO. It's a book about what makes design effective. So it's really about how to make a website engaging and more effective for your goal. So if someone were to come to me and say, David, I have a picture of a piano on my page about OBGYN practice or something like that, I would say, let's forget about SEO for a moment. And let's just think about the user. When a user lands on a page, their eyes are going to go straight to that image. They're going to your eyes just go right there. what does that image tell them that they've landed on? Well, it says you landed on a page about pianos. Now, you might be trying to make a point about the musical artistry of your, I don't know, but that's also, but it's confusing because not most people are not going to get that. And frankly, most people don't even read the words to take the time to understand the analogy if you take the time to explain the analogy. So if we're forgetting about SEO, it creates a very confusing user experience. And for that reason alone, it's probably a good idea to take it and use a different photo, at least front and center. You know, maybe there's a reason to put it in the middle of the page or something, if with an explanation and a caption underneath it explaining the analogy or something. But yeah, I'd say if we forget about SEO, that's what I would try to argue them with. You know, I'm coming as your SEO consultant, but forget about SEO as a usability perspective. This is very confusing. It might end up hurting them from a user perspective. They think they land on the wrong page before they even read a word, they leave. So that's very disappointing. From a purely SEO perspective, Google has no idea that that's a piano on an OBGYN page or a musical instrument on a healthcare page. It doesn't know what that is. Google algorithm doesn't really read images. So in one sense, from a Google perspective, from an SEO perspective, it kind of doesn't matter. That's why there's things called alt tags to add to the image to tell Google what the image is of and relate it to the topic of the page. That Google can read the alt tag, which are there for screen readers for blind people to be able to read websites. Well, Google uses it, pardon me, as a ranking factor for Google in search engines. So you could theoretically put a page for a piano on your OBGYN page and alt tag it. Our OBGYN is an experienced pianist. Okay, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but at least you would have explained the image on the page. And in that sense, it would help SEO because you would be relating it to your topic. But yeah, that's kind of how I would approach that problem. People are very visual. SEO is about writing a lot of words for sure, but we kind of also know that people don't really read the words we put on the page. They go to the page and they go, oh, it's a piano. I'm on the wrong page, and they leave. So that's how I would approach that problem. Does that kind of help give you some vocabulary to explain to the client, Anita?
Yes, thank you, because I just looked at this and was like, okay, you know, we've been round and round, and the reason that she actually hired me was she saw another site that I did, and when I saw her site, it was filled up with a bunch of useless images that were slowing the page down, and a bunch of stuff that when she hired me to get rid of all this stuff that she's now telling me she wants back on this site. And so it's like, you know what? You could have just kept the site you had rather than me spending time building you a very nice, functional, thinking about who you're talking to site. And now you want me to fill it up with all these graphics that have nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish.
I swear half of SEO is client management. I had a similar situation this week where I was brought in to consult for SEO, and I noticed a couple things about their website. I said, you know, here's some free unsolicited advice. I don't know how welcome it was, but I kind of jumped in and said, hey, here I am as an outside perspective. Because sometimes you're so into your site, you got the blinders on, and you know what you mean, and you know what you like, and you forget that a lot of the people who are coming to your site have never been there before, never seen it, and you're giving you need to give a good first impression, or you'll lose that opportunity to get them as a customer And sometimes people are kind of blind to that idea and they forget that they've overthought their website too much. And they need us to come in and say, hey, from an outside perspective, I think you're really missing the boat here, with the hopes that they'll listen. But sometimes you're not alone. They don't listen, you know, even though you're trying to help them. And in that case, the cynic in me says, you don't have to take my advice, you just have to pay me. But I really want you to succeed. I really want you to do well. So please take my advice. I'm acting in your interest. I really want you to do well. And I don't know how to convince you to believe me that I really want the best for you. That's a tough conversation with somebody, especially if they really settled in their ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating because it's like, you know what? You could have saved yourself money and just kept what you had if you want the very things that was part of the reason that you contracted me put right back on your site. It makes no sense whatsoever to put all these things that are basically, you would see them on Facebook or Instagram. They're just pictures with words on them that actually don't have anything to do with what she's doing. They're just motivational quotes. Well, yeah, there's going to be a motivational component, but put that on your social media. Put something a little bit more relevant, especially when you're trying to go for a more upscale client. That's not what they're looking for when they go to a site. If you're trying to get somebody to give you $199 monthly membership, they don't expect to see social media posts as part of your website content. And that's the hardest thing I'm trying to get through right now.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point of how different good SEO content is from social media content. While I like to use my SEO content on social media, we have to understand that we're speaking to two different audiences, and people have different expectations of what they're going to encounter. And so, yeah, an inspirational quote on Instagram, that's a great idea to get good engagement and good exposure, but that's not necessarily good content for getting traffic from search engines for people looking for what you have to offer as a service. It's a little bit different. Now, it can be used to build credibility, maybe to show, hey, we care about you. But yeah, there's a big difference between good SEO content and good social media content. I think that's a really good point.
LaVonya, you got a lot more experience building websites than me, girl. Give me some nugget.
Um, I agree with what you're saying about putting the, which makes sense when she wants to put like inspirational quotes on your website or I don't know, infographics or stuff like that. That's more of social media. So I agree with you on that. That makes sense to put it on social media and not your website. Yeah, from as I study WordPress a lot, they always say keep it simple on your website. Less is better. A lot of times, you don't want your website to have a whole lot of stuff on it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and it's a tough lesson to learn because clients feel like it's easy to feel that more is better, but simplicity is less distracting and more to the point.
And also, the more stuff you have on your website, it'll also slow it down as well. It takes a long time to load.
Yep. Yeah. I've had a client who insisted that they had to have a, a rotating slideshow banner thing on their homepage. And they just kept adding more and more and more and more to that thing. It was a 10 megabyte file by the end of it, trying to be downloaded on mobile phones on a terrible 3G connection. Oh my goodness, like nobody's waiting for your page to load. And we finally convinced them to stop. They just kept adding more. But this is important too. Well, if everything's important, nothing's important. And so once we were able to focus them on the most important thing and keep them focused on that, life became a little bit easier for them too, and more effective.
Do you assist your clients with SEO on social media sites also, or just websites only?
You know, not really with this, with social media sites. I think that social media sites, the thing I think about with them when it comes to SEO is controlling how someone searches for my company's brand. So when I want someone to find my main company, Reliable Acorn, I want them to see my main site, obviously, but I want them to see that I contribute and talk on Twitter, and have a LinkedIn page and have a lot of LinkedIn credibility and referrals. And I want them to see that, you know, I'm also on Facebook and I'm sharing content there if people want to see. I kind of use social media to stack the deck when someone does a search for my company, rather than try to use social media to be found for people who aren't looking for me but are looking for a topic.
Okay, gotcha.
I have had to resort to a strategy like that before when a client was really hesitant to change much on their site. And so what we would do is we would attempt to rank. In this case, we did social bookmarking sites to rank for their keywords and then send them to the client's sites. It wasn't a great strategy because you could lose a lot of people as they went to the social media site, and then they get lost and they wouldn't end up coming to the client's site. But it was better than not being able to optimize the client's site.
So when you're doing keywords and then you say, okay, well, this is most likely a good keyword, and then you write the article for it, then I guess you let it sit out there for several months and see if people are going to that particular blog post to see if it works for them, if it's attracting customers.
Yeah, I like to make a distinction, though, between a blog post and a page. So a page, in my mind, is a more sales-oriented, self-promoting, this is what I have and why you need it page. I always make sure I have a page for every service my clients offer. And that is just a static resource that exists. When it comes to blogging, I'm using those to be found for long tail kind of specific questions that I wouldn't necessarily answer on the landing page per se. And then if I'll link from the blog post to the landing page. In my mind, a blog post needs to be more altruistic and helpful and less sales oriented. But because it's on my site, I can get away with, oh, and by the way, we offer this service, go here to find out about that service. Mm-hmm. So I tend to think of blog posts as more helpful and altruistic and not salesy, and a page as, here's what I offer, this is for sale, you should buy it from me. And then I connect the two by making sure that the blog post points to the page. So I'm not really looking at optimizing a blog post as much as using the blog post to help send traffic to the service page for people who are looking for a service.
Okay, I understand because I think I did that the other day when I was looking up something. It brought me to somebody's business and I was reading their blog post that they wrote. And then I went up to look at their service and their prices. So, okay, that's what it's used for, to get them to look more around your website.
So yeah, for example, like I might have a blog post on, I wrote a blog post on my main website recently about Google Discovery and how to track results from Google Discovery. And okay, that's helpful. Hopefully some people found it useful, and theoretically they could go to Google and they could find that post. But I'm not selling that service on the page. However, this is part of an SEO campaign, and on that I mentioned in a link from that post to the SEO service. So the post about how to track your results in Google Discover is helpful, but it's not necessarily directly related to SEO. It is tangentially related to SEO, so I'm going to mention SEO in it and link to the SEO page on my site. The SEO page on my site is, this is SEO, this is why you need it, and this is why you should hire me to do it for you. So I get the people from the Discover article. They go, oh, this is very helpful. This is interesting. Oh yeah, I would like to get someone to help me with this. He seems credible. Go to my page, and that's when I make the sale, or try to make the sale at least, right? That's kind of how I feel that a blog fits in with all this. Now, some people might use a blog to talk about other potential keywords that people might search for, and surely you should do some keyword research to see what people are looking for so you can blog about it. But if it's a real, if what they're searching for is something I want to sell, I need the tone to be more direct and make the sale. So I'm going to put that as a page. I might organize that on my site a little differently. But if it's just a blog post asking a question or answering a question, talking about something related to what I do, but not a sales pitch for what I do, then I'm going to put it as a blog post.
Okay.
Well, great. Do we have any other questions for today? Well, thank you then.
Thank you, David. You're always helpful.
Well, I hope to be that way.
Very motivating.
I want to take a